And now, Rita and James, let's go to our mate Benji Irby. Benji, you're there in North or South Carolina. I always forget which one it is. How are you, mate?
I'm actually in Virginia.
You're in Virginia. There you go.
But close.
And what's happened? What's happened? Tell me. It's early in the morning there. You've woken up. What has happened in Virginia, and what is happening in your opinion overall?
Well, I believe Biden won this state, unfortunately. But before I get into that, I'd like to tell everybody about my new podcast, ratchetrepublican.com. I've been up for about 4 or 5 weeks now. So I love all my Australian people to check it out on my website, ratchetrepublican.com, or you can check me out on any of the podcast streaming platforms like Apple or Google and stuff like that. We've been talking and interviewing people about the election and all this stuff. But as far as how we are held up right now, I'm not really surprised by that. I mean, I knew that the Democrats were going to play games with this thing because they've been talking about this for months. This whole mail-in voting and all this crap was designed to be able to make this sort of thing happen this morning. But President Trump is still ahead in most of these states. So I'm really not seeing how Biden would come back and rebound except by a whole lot of chicanery and trickery. But we've all been very prayerful here supporting Trump, and we've all been very much, vigilant and watching what's going on. Even at my own polling location, I saw Democrats cheating. They were electioneering and handing out sample ballots like right in front of the polling location, which is totally wrong and against the law. But we knew the Democrats were going to cheat, so none of this is really a surprise to me. They're just belaboring the inevitable. Donald Trump is going to win this election. The left is going to cry like they've been crying for the last 4 years. And, who cares?
James.
So Benji, is it your opinion that actually, what I should more like to ask about is Virginia? What happened in Virginia? Because at one point the thing was looking great for Trump, and then suddenly I refreshed my browser and the whole thing was, going the other way. Was it Fairfax County, or do you think that there was some sort of, as you say, chicanery involved?
Well, I think that because Fox News had called Virginia for Biden very early when a lot of the votes weren't in. I mean, to be honest, living here in Virginia, I'm in Southern Virginia where, this is much more Trump country, but the upper counties of Virginia, like Fairfax County and things like that, that's around Washington, D.C., a city that went 94%, which is actually, Trump actually did better in D.C. than he did with Hillary. He did a little better this time. He got 6%. Last time he got 4%. But for a city that goes, overwhelmingly for Democrats, those are, their southern suburbs. So I'm not really surprised that Virginia would shake out for Biden, unfortunately, just because of those northern counties.
Rita.
I want to ask you about the black and Hispanic vote that seems to have increased for Trump by quite a margin compared to 2016 and what Republican candidates have got in past presidential elections. What do you think's behind that?
Well, I think that black people, black men, and I think men in general, actually, working class men in general, are just tired of the feminist, the feminist push, the LGBT push. While no one hates women or gay people, but it just seems like that seems to be all the Democrat Party is concerned about. I always say the Democrat Party is only concerned about 2 black men. Either he has to be dead or in a dress for the Democrat Party to care. And that's pretty much what it's about. If you're a working class, man, you're considered the patriarchy. You're considered, a toxic masculine man. So, I'm not really surprised at the movement. There's actually a hashtag right now called, Blame Black Men on Twitter. And a lot of black men are feeling like when Joe Biden loses, they're ultimately going to be the ones blamed for it. Because it seems like the left is always blaming black men for everything. So I'm really not surprised at that. Even with the rappers, a lot of people were saying that it was about the taxes. And I do think it's about the taxes, but it's also about the fact that these men are in their, late 30s, early 40s. And that's about the time when people turn conservative, because even myself, I was a liberal my entire young life, but then, turning in my mid-30s, I turned conservative. So I'm really not surprised. I think at about this time, for a lot of those rappers, they grew up in Democrat run cities and under Democrat-run governments, so they've seen the lies of Democrats, and now being older, going from being poor to being rich, they've seen that it's crap all around. A lot of them are just like, you know what, this is ridiculous. Let's try something new. Let's look at what happened with Ice Cube. Ice Cube had his plan for Black America that he put out to the Biden people, and they said, oh, we'll talk to you after the election, and President Trump actually took action on it. So I'm really not surprised at it. I love to see when the actual number is going to be when it all ends.
And we've got a tweet from the walk away was one of the movements. There was Blexit. There were other movements. How big a role did these movements play galvanizing African Americans, do you think?
I'm sorry, Rowan, I couldn't hear your question. Could you tell me that one more time?
Yeah, just how big a push from walk away. There was hash walk away. There was hash Blexit. So the different movements actively encouraging African Americans to leave the Democratic Party. How big a role did they play, do you think?
I definitely think they could be a part. I mean, I'm definitely, friends with, and I love Brandon Schrock, who's actually the head of the Walkaway movement. But I think even more than any other movement could have done, it's really just the actions of President Trump himself. President Trump was always very popular before he became president, with the Black community and with the rap community. His name was in like 200 or something or so rap songs. So I think that a lot of these rappers too, especially like 50 Cent, people like that, they knew Trump before. So it's kind of like they're coming home to Trump in a way. But I do think that like the walkaway movement and things like that have definitely helped Black people to see the light and to actually be a little bit more open about their moving to Republican, because at the end of the day, just being out and being in a lot of these urban areas and Black areas, it's very difficult to say I support President Trump. But I do think that these movements have made it a lot easier, and it makes people able to be with like-minded individuals and to go to different events and things like that, and to have the support in making that decision to switch over to conservative. So I definitely do think it's helped, but no more than what Trump has done himself. If Trump wasn't actually doing the work himself, I still feel like those movements wouldn't do but so much, because at the end of the day, it is about the president.
James?
I'm wondering, you mentioned before that you said that some rappers, as they made money, they changed their political views and they became more conservative. But I'll tell you what, Rita and I just spent about a week or so driving around the northeast of this country. And one of the things that we noticed is that the fancier neighborhood you went into, where the houses were bigger and more expensive, the more likely you were to see Biden signs. There's a funny thing that's happening, I think, and I'd like you to speak to this and tell me what you think, where the Republicans have now become the party of the working class and the working people and people without, fancy cars and fancy houses and fancy ski holidays, where the Democrats have now become, the party of the well-off, the elite, capital, and, of course, the billionaires. Have you noticed this shift yourself, and where do you think this goes for the Democrats and the Republicans?
Absolutely. There's absolutely been a total political realignment at this point. I mean, they used to be where the Democrats were the party of the working class, and they definitely are not now. And now we have Donald Trump coming in on rough and tumble, and he's bringing in all the quote unquote, working class people, the working stiffs, and the quote unquote white trash are all, supporting Donald Trump. And it's funny because you always get this line on like MSNBC and, CNN and all the fake news channels that talk about, Trump and his billionaire friends. When the truth is, Trump has no billionaire friends. All the major billionaires, whether it be Jeff Bezos or Warren Buffett or Jay-Z and Beyonce or, Bill Gates, they're all supporting Biden. So I always try to point that out to the wokies when they try to make it like Trump is rich and whatever. I mean, and then they're going to also say that, Trump's not a real billionaire every 5 seconds. So it's like the left needs to pick a narrative, but there definitely is a political realignment happening. It's definitely more so for the, quote unquote, lower educated or the quote unquote not college educated people. A lot of them are more supporting Donald Trump because Donald Trump supports jobs for people that are in this country who want to work with their hands, people that didn't necessarily have to go through, the hoop of going through college and trying to get, all these degrees and whatever. Donald Trump his policies are for the working man. So this is actually a realignment. And when you see a lot of these never Trump people that are in the Lincoln Project, a little loser, scenarios like that, they are the upper class, college, upper class, country club Republican who doesn't like the fact that all these, rough and tumble poor people are now joining their party. So now they move to the Democrat Party because the Democrat Party is now the party of, brie cheese and, country clubs. That's why you see a lot of the black working class leaving the Democrat Party, because they're seeing the fact that these people are not actually out, for them or out for the country. And that's why you're seeing a lot of black people move over to the Republican Party. I am very curious, though, when this is all over and once President Trump decides the winner, what the black and Latino voting percentages are. I think it'll be a very interesting story.
Absolutely. And Benji Irby, we will get you back to discuss that. Hopefully, we may have a President Trump later today. You never know. Good luck there in Virginia. And thanks for talking to us, Benji. We'll catch up soon.
Thank you. Have a good one, guys.